So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Alex Matos, the Executive Director at Amscham Taipei. It's my pleasure to welcome the team at Sotheby's International Realty and Prestige Law to present today and provide us with some great insights into how COVID-19 has impacted the New Zealand property market. For those of you who don't know, Sotheby's International Realty was founded in 1976, and they serve their clients with providing a complete selection of luxury listings. And they're one of the global leaders in real estate brokerage with representation around the world, including in Taiwan, New Zealand, and Australia, US, and the UK. While Prestige Law is a multilingual law firm specializing in cross-cultural dispute resolution specifically for Chinese-speaking clients, and they're based in New Zealand. So before we begin, I'd like to quickly go through our agenda for today. So we'll have a quick introduction after me with Nina Wu, the Vice President of the Business Development at Taiwan Sotheby's International Realty. Then we'll have insights into the New Zealand property market with Jason Gage, the Sale Manager for Auckland Projects and Developments, and Scarlett Wood, the Director of International Business at New Zealand Sotheby's International Realty. Followed by a quick overview of how to invest virtually and kind of looking into the legal aspects of buying property in New Zealand with Royal Fu, the founder and principal of Prestige Law. Let me thank again our speakers, especially those in New Zealand. It's 6 p.m. in New Zealand today, so they're spending their dinner time with us, so we really appreciate it. For our audience members, if you have any questions, you can ask them throughout. So on your screen at the very bottom, there should be a speech bubble. If you click it, you can use the chat box function to ask questions throughout the presentation, and then we'll leave all the answering of the questions to the very end. So on that note, I'd like to hand it over to our first speaker, Nina Wu.
Sotheby's International Realty. So I will briefly introduce how our brand can provide quality service for home buyers and investors. So Alex, can we go on the slides? The next page, please. Yeah. As Alex already mentioned, that we are lineage to Sotheby's Auction, one of the world's biggest auction house. So currently, can we go to the next slide? So currently we have more than 1,000 offices for Sotheby's Realties across 72 countries, which means through one agent, we can help you to manage your properties over the world. Next. So for the impact and aftermath of COVID-19, then we found out that people are changing their lifestyles of where they work, how they work, where they live, and how they live. So a lot of urbanites are fleeing to more urban, remote, secluded vacation spots just to seek for luxury space and for more access to nature. Next. So no matter where you are, if you're looking for Taiwan's properties or overseas properties, we can help you with finding your dream home or offices, storefronts, warehouse, and lands. Next. So now I'm gonna pass to my affiliates who will be introducing you how New Zealand is a safe haven in this COVID world. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Jason Geddes. I'm the Sales Manager for Projects and Developments at Sotheby's, New Zealand Sotheby's International Realty here in Auckland, New Zealand. Thanks for taking the time to join us this evening or this afternoon, wherever you are. Appreciate your time. Just to give you a bit of an update on where things were and are now pre and post COVID. Leading up to the market in January and February of this year, we were experiencing a continuation of what was going on in late 2019, which was quite a positive market towards the end of last year. In the retail residential environment, it was tracking along really nicely. January and February continued on in that vein, as I mentioned. And, you know, we had some rather large expectations for what 2020 was going to look like, as I'm sure everybody did. And then along came COVID, as we know. In fact, in February of this year, there were a number of records set in New Zealand. The national average property record price was established, which was great. And in particular in Auckland, we were showing the highest transaction numbers that we'd seen in residential property sales for the last couple of years. Some of the things that impacted, contributing towards that were incredibly low historical interest rates. that we're experiencing, back then, and that's even changed again now. Along with that, we had quite a stable economy. It wasn't, booming along, but it was continue on in quite a positive vein, which was great. One of the things that was on the horizon for us, though, was an upcoming general election later in the year, which is occurring in September. So that was always in the back of our minds. But generally speaking, we were in pretty good shape and expecting to have a pretty solid 2020 in residential sales, and especially in the higher end of the market, the more luxury side of things that we tend to deal in. Moving forward into March, we started to experience the first signs of a slowdown with COVID on the horizon. Obviously, the international media reports and things coming out of different countries wasn't looking good, and unfortunately, we started to experience our first signs of COVID in New Zealand. And then moving forward into April, we were in a situation where our government made a brave decision, we think, at that point, to close down our borders and lock the country down. And that was really to try and take COVID on head on. This had a severe effect, obviously, on our economy, and in particular the residential property market. In fact, market activity dropped by 75% during the month of April as we were forced indoors, which was something that no one had really seen in our lifetimes, certainly for Scarlett and I. That's for sure. So it was quite a strange environment to be in, as I'm sure some of you have experienced along the way as well. So quite tricky times, and a lot of unforeseen and unknown future. So where are we now coming out the other side of it? Well, as of midnight last night, New Zealand time, we're happy to say that we are officially COVID-free. So the steps that were taken by our government to close the borders and tackle COVID head on has worked wonders for us from a national health perspective. We have no new cases have been recorded in New Zealand for the last 18 days straight. We have nobody in hospital. So I guess in theory, and our government's telling us this, we are COVID-19 free. So we're very fortunate. Having said that, the downside is that our borders remain closed and in lockdown. So what that means for us in the future is, what do we do now, regarding our economy? The property market now, we're into May, and what we've been seeing is a return actually into June, of course, but thanks. Late May and leading into June, we've seen that the market is really strengthening and continuing on to some of that pre-COVID positivity, which is really, really great to see. And now we're into a normal type of lifestyle here, which is great to see. Things are looking pretty good. Our OCR official cash rate is down to the lowest it's ever been, in New Zealand at 0.25%. We've got historically low interest rates, and these are all excellent, positives for buyers in the marketplace, looking to either purchase as investments or looking to, make changes in their lifestyle, which is good to see. Our first home buyer website traffic is up, 130%, which is huge, because that's an area of our market that had struggled before. So cheap interest rates, and that has been fueling interest in that space. Once our borders reopen later in the year, hopefully we're expecting then our tourism to pick up again, and we would expect some foreign investors to be able to get back into the country, and we'll move on again to what 2019 looked like.
All right, next please. Okay, so I think in Taiwan you never went into level 4 lockdown, so you guys are really lucky over there. But so why buy in New Zealand, or why move to New Zealand? I think we can all agree that New Zealand is one of the most politically stable and peaceful nation in the world, something that I think all Kiwis, we take pride in. We are a small island country in the Southern Hemisphere, and I think that puts us in a real advantage in many ways. We were able to close our borders in March to stop cruise ships coming in, stop air travels for non-New Zealanders or residents coming into the country. But we're very happy that last night we moved into alert level 1. And I think as a country, everybody worked, achieved the result together. And so after nearly 3 months of disruptions to our businesses, we're really happy that everything should go back to normality now. Today, I think today is the 18th day of consecutive days of no COVID cases. So we really like to keep it that way. And apparently New Zealand was voted the friendliest people on earth through one of the surveys of expats. So this survey was done by expats rated New Zealand on how easy it is to befriend in New Zealand, how easy it is to learn the culture and the language. Next, please.
Looking at the interest in property, in New Zealand, of course, where our inquiries are coming from, what's really fueling the market at the moment. We've got a largely an aging population, I guess, the baby boomer generation, which have over a long period of time acquired considerable amount of wealth in hard assets, mainly in residential property, as markets have continued to expand over the years, and capital gains have been seen in those spaces. So baby boomers are a great market for us here in New Zealand, who are acquiring property, downsizing a lot from larger family homes, which we can talk a little bit about later. So that's one particular marketplace.
I just want to add on baby boomers. Please. So we do see a lot of them having a smaller property in Auckland, but also having another comfortable house down in Central Otago, Queenstown, Wanaka, those places. And can I carry on?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got lots of New Zealand expats inquiring since late last year, since the Hong Kong riots began. And then especially towards the end of last year and beginning of 2020 when coronavirus started. Yeah, and also then the other origin of inquiries, I think, is the Generation X's from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore, where these people have previously lived and studied in New Zealand back in 1990s to early 2000, and most of them have left New Zealand after they got New Zealand university degrees. And so they've returned to Asia for career opportunities. But these people, Generation X's, have resurfaced again in the recent years because they have school-age children, they have teenage children, and they want to provide the same opportunities they once had, which their parents provided them 20, 30 years ago. So those are our 3 main origin of inquiries.
Next slide, please.
Next, okay.
Right, guys, one of the things we have here, which just a very, very brief background. In 2018, the New Zealand government introduced into legislation a foreign buyer ban, which basically restricted all foreigners from outside of New Zealand, non-New Zealand residents or non-New Zealand permanent residents and non-New Zealand citizens from purchasing residential property in New Zealand. This was done for political reasons, which we won't get into, but anyway, that's the law at the moment. However, we do have some properties that do have foreign buyer exemption certificates here in New Zealand, and a couple of those involve either new build developments that are adding property to the New Zealand market, Now they need to have been under construction prior to 2018, but there are a number of those which are good. And what that enables those properties from a purchaser point of view to be able to do is that not only can you invest in the residential market in New Zealand, but you'd also be able to live in it. And that applies to all foreigners around the world. It's important to note that Australian citizens and citizens of Singapore and Singaporean nationals are exempt by right from this legislation due to our free trade agreements that we have with both of those countries. So Aussies and Singaporeans by right. Other foreign nationals can still purchase in New Zealand under the foreign exemption rule that we have on some properties. So the most common type, as I mentioned, are going to be new build developments, particularly apartments that have exemption, which there aren't a lot that foreigners would be able to purchase and live in. The next most common type of exemption is going to be the same type of thing, a new build that has an exemption, but an investor exemption only, wherein a foreigner can still invest into the property, but they wouldn't be able to live in it. They could, of course, rent it out for a yield, and then they'd still be able to sell it later on, but would not be able to live in it at all. And the third type, of course, is if the property has has been able to prove that it has some form of commercial activity, and not just an overnight Airbnb type of situation, but where it was converted to a lodge or permanent holiday type accommodation, such as a hotel or something similar to that. So,
next slide, please.
So just talking about apartments, as we were before, a little bit of background on how the apartment living has morphed in New Zealand. In the 90s, there were, apartment living was very new to New Zealand. We were typically large plots of land with substantial size homes on it, and that's how Kiwis had sort of lived for generations. But as our major metropolises grew, in particular Auckland, there was demand for higher density accommodation, and along came the shoebox apartment market, which was a number of multi-level apartments of very small size that were designed, for relatively cheap, and for cheap accommodation, particularly for the student market, overseas student market that were coming to New Zealand and needed accommodation. But instead of paying rent, they were able to invest in something and something they could call their own. Over time, there was sort of shift in demographics, and we mentioned the baby boomer market earlier, where the downsizers in New Zealand who had large family homes and were approaching retirement age were suddenly thinking, my family home now, I've acquired a lot of equity in over the years due to capital gain. I'd now like to take some money out of that property, downsize myself into an apartment style of living, and take some cash out for my retirement, or invest, as Scarlett mentioned earlier, into additional properties located around the country, whether it be a beach house or a holiday home in the alpine regions of the Southern Lakes down in Otago, Queenstown area. Off the back of that, of course, with that appetite for that sort of living, those people weren't interested in shoebox style apartments. They were after more luxurious, larger style living, and hence we've grown into a market now where we are building, and we've been quite successful in marketing a number of high-end quality apartment developments that are based on larger apartments, high levels of fit outs, far more luxurious, and exactly what our baby boomer market is looking for. Next slide, please.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the international apartments in Auckland. So it's going to be one of the most iconic luxury apartment residences in New Zealand once complete in August. There are going to be 90 freehold apartments across 17 levels, 1 to 3 bedroom apartments from level 5 to 14. We've got 8 sub penthouses in level 15 to 16, and level 17 is owned by one sole owner. Many of you might recognize the facade in front of the building. So it used to be the Auckland Hotel or the Grand Hotel back in the days, late 18th century until 1960s. It was the Auckland Hotel, and then after that it was the KPMG office, and then it was the Fonterra headquarter. I think many of you might remember. It is in a fantastic location. It's right in the city, Auckland city centre, but far away enough from all the hustle and bustle. There is the Pullman Hotel right across the street. You've got the prestigious Northern Club to the side, and Old Government House and University of Auckland just across the road. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Mm-hmm. So we've got 3 sub-penthouses to remain. Sorry, previous slide. Thank you, Alex. We've got 3 sub-penthouses apartments remaining. They are 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms with butler's pantry, overlooking the harbour and also Albert Park and Auckland Domain. They come with 2 car parks, and they all get a wine fridge in the wine tasting room. Next slide. Thank you. So the international apartment is the first apartment residence in New Zealand that comes with 5-star amenities on site. So if you look at the top left-hand corner, we've got the private dining room that can host up to 20 guests. So whether you are having a birthday dinner, anniversary, or even just a business function, we've got you covered. We have a full service restaurant in the lobby level. It will be operated by a New Zealand celebrity chef, Josh Emmett. And for those of you who are not familiar with Josh Emmett, he would be the equivalent of a Taiwanese celebrity chef, Andre Jiang Zhengchen, who runs Raw Restaurant in Taipei. So we're all very excited about it. To the left, clockwise, we've got an outdoor heated pool with spa for the residents to enjoy. Coming down, the interior is beautifully designed by New Zealand renowned interior designer Rufus Knight, giving a minimalist look with travertine stone, oak flooring. Most of the apartments are 3 meters start height. The sub-penthouses are 3.2 meters start height. Next, please. So the on-site amenities include our wine cellar, tasting room, private dining room, outdoor terrace, pool and spa, gym, underground parking, a concierge service. We've got a private cinema that sits up to 16 guests, and a library. So these 2-bedroom apartments start from circa 1.95 million New Zealand dollars, roughly 38 million NT Taiwan dollars. This is one of the projects that has been granted foreign exemption certificate. So foreigners can not only purchase, you can actually live in these apartments. Next slide, please.
Yeah, guys, look, it's our pleasure to actually introduce this property as well, the super penthouse at the Pacifica development here in Auckland. This is a new build that's currently under construction, and it will be delivered up in entirety at the end of this year, end of 2020. One of the most amazing opportunities that we've seen in New Zealand. This will be iconic in that it will be the most expensive apartment ever constructed and sold here in New Zealand. In fact, it may even end up being the most expensive property if Scarlett and I are able to sell it, ever built and sold. It's the top 2 floors of the 54-story tower, so level 53 and 54. It's over 1,200 square meters in size, so a little over 13,000 square feet, I think, in the other terminology. 2 full floors, as I mentioned. We're offering it for sale as either a warm shell, and this is where it is quite unique in that it gives the potential purchaser the option to come in and fit it out to exactly their standard and to their budget. And we know that at this level, there are buyers out there who have very particular tastes. So it's great to be able to offer it up in this capacity. Or alternatively, there are some fantastic concept plans that have been designed by the developer, which we have available as well, and they consist of a 5-bedroom, 9-bathroom layout with a whole host of other goodies that exist across this. So stunning views of the Waitemata Harbour here in Auckland, as you can see, on the render. Amazing looking views across to the Hauraki Gulf and the Gulf Islands here in Auckland. It truly is one of a kind, unlikely to ever be repeated, just because of the size of our economy here in New Zealand and our population base. We're really excited about the opportunity to bring this to the world. It's amazing. Host of amenities on site, similar to the other development Scarlett just mentioned before, and it truly is world class. There will be in the building a 41-room boutique 5-star hotel located in the lower floors as well. So that potential purchaser, if they've got friends and guests visiting and they can't cram them into 1,200 square meters of luxury apartment, you can always rent a room downstairs in the hotel to look after everybody. So next slide, please. Oh, and that's just some images on of more of the wonderful views and that you can experience from that super penthouse at the top of the Pacifica.
So with the super penthouse, we've got 5 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms.
Correct.
We have a gym on level 53, I think.
Yep.
In the architect render. What else do we
wine
have?
cellar. There's a wine cellar with a wine tasting room. There is an office, fully contained, office available. We have 2 internal staircases, a beautiful architecturally designed sweeping staircase from the upper living down to the lower level, and then a more private staircase as well from the kitchen in through the other service quarters, also adjoining the 2 floors together. Express lift service, elevator service to both floors, which is all private and secure. So it truly is wonderful. Floor to ceiling glazing all around, 360-degree views, which are absolutely stunning. It is the highest apartment building in New Zealand, and the penthouse sits, of course, at the top. So as we mentioned before, probably not to be repeated, certainly anytime soon. So amazing, yeah.
Next slide, please.
In this property here, we're just sort of looking at some other residential developments that around the eastern suburbs area of Auckland, which is close to the harbour again. These are at different price points. Brand new construction. This particular property will be delivered up later in the year. It's a 41 apartment development, brand new construction, very high end, very good quality. That would be available to Australian and Singaporean nationals, as well as obviously our expat community that might be tuning in at the moment, and of course available to any permanent residents here in New Zealand. It's a quality build and just another example of what we're doing here in New Zealand. So next slide, please. Thanks, Alex. Interior fit outs, again, some great views and aspects to be had there. 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 2-bedroom plus study options. This is just over 5 levels, so it's more of a suburban type of property, but a very high quality build and construction nonetheless. It's as I said, it's selling very well at the moment and available at the end of this year.
What's this price starting from?
price point starting here is 1.3 million New Zealand dollars. So it's in that really affordable price point that we would consider for our residential market here, especially for a new build. It very high quality, as I mentioned before. European appliances throughout. Some great building materials being used on site, so and architecturally designed. Next slide, please. And this is another development which is new. We're selling this one off plan. It's not under construction yet, but it is a development of just 5 full-floor residences. It's the beautiful Sonata development in St Heliers Bay here in Auckland. Again, it's in the eastern suburbs. The views from this development are absolutely breathtaking. So if we can go to the next slide, Alex, that'd be great, and I can just we can share with you what this looks like. So yeah, that's a view from the main living area across the harbour to Rangitoto Island here in the Hauraki Gulf of Auckland. It's a northeasterly aspect, so or it's actually a northerly aspect. The sunshine there you can see is coming in from the morning in the east, and then to the west of the building there's glass all along that side, so you have stunning views down the harbour back towards the city. So as I mentioned, there's 5 full floors and only 5 apartments in the block. So size-wise, they're ranging from about 240 square metres in internal space up to about 280, and it's a very high-end luxurious development. Starting price around 7 million or so New Zealand dollars. So, next slide, please. And just some more, some shots. Looking, as I mentioned, at the top there, back down the harbour to the west, which is lovely. One of the apartments, you can see there's a couple of shots, a couple of renders of fantastic outdoor spaces, which are amazing, and then a kitchen and layout shot there at the bottom. Thank you.
Next, please. Okay, so beside beautiful apartments and projects, our core business is actually around high-end residential properties across New Zealand. New Zealand Sotheby's International Realty was founded in 2005 by our managing directors, Mark Harris and Julian Brown. We have 16 offices throughout the country. We have Auckland, Tauranga, Rotorua, Taupo, Napier, Wellington, our capital. We've got Nelson, Marlborough, Wanaka, Queenstown, Arrowtown.
Well done.
In the past year, over the last 10 years, we've seen significant increase in interest in tourist destinations such as Queenstown, Wanaka, and even Waiheke. So hence we have offices in these places to facilitate interest and sales. As an extension to our residential sales, we also have luxury rental division that provides you opportunities to experience the unique accommodations when you are on holiday escape. So we have some truly significant properties in Central Otago, Queenstown, Wanaka, and Arrowtown. And they have really attracted international purchasers in the past, and because these international purchasers, they don't normally reside in New Zealand, they would pass on these properties to Sotheby's, where we manage their properties as short-term rental management, and whereby they will get a healthy investment return and capital gain. So whether you are looking for a sleek apartment overlooking Lake Wakatipu in the summer, or whether you want a substantial house for 10 guests during the winter months for a ski retreat, we can take care of you all year round. So traditionally we've seen huge demand in Auckland and Queenstown, and this is obviously reflected in the property prices. A news article came out, I think, April this year, and it mentioned that Queenstown's property, the Queenstown Lakes District prices have more than doubled since 2010, when the median price was 480,000 K, and compared to January this year was just over $1 million. So Queenstown median prices is only second after Auckland prices. But then again, I think Auckland will always remain high, because 1/3 of New Zealand's population reside in Auckland region, and Auckland remains the gateway for international travelers into New Zealand. Next, please.
So we'll just run through just a few more examples of some, style of properties that are available in New Zealand for those who aren't familiar with what our traditional homes and things like, well, these aren't traditional, they're quite luxurious, but yeah, of what some of the New Zealand architecture looks like, and what some of the properties are like to purchase in New Zealand. This one here is a inner city suburb. It's quite a very high spec home. Ideal for entertaining, lovely facilities that you can see there, as you can see, with swimming pool, etc. And that's very close to the CBD, 5 minutes drive from where the action is, entertainment-wise. So, but also, surrounded by similar type homes. So very easy access to the CBD, and price point of in the mid $6 million range. Next slide, please. And then this one here, it's a rural property on the outskirts of Auckland. This is probably 45 minutes perhaps drive from downtown Auckland, quite close to Auckland Airport, maybe only 30 minutes from there. Rural property, magnificent home. It really is an estate, tennis court, pool, 62 acres, and a large home at 627 square meters. With stables, and it's been beautifully put together. It's an extraordinary property, and price point of around $10 million or so, but certainly offering a lot of value for the size of the property, and particularly the land.
I think they've got 13 car parks. So
there you go. Bring your cars.
Great for car collectors.
Yeah. Anyone with a lot of cars, we need you. That's the one.
Next, please. Thank you. So Queenstown always has a very special place in my heart. I lived there for a year back in the 90s with my family. Okay, so we're now looking at this beautiful Queenstown three-bedroom townhouse. The view is spectacular. I think no one can get tired of looking at the Lake Wakatipu, and I presume that would be where I want to go into quarantine if we have to go into quarantine again. Okay, so this three-bedroom townhouse is just about 6 minutes away from the airport, and about the same distance to the Queenstown Town Centre. But what's really unique about this property is its neighbouring property received consent for short-term visitors accommodation up to 365 days, meaning if this property were to apply for consent, it shouldn't have too much issue in getting the same consent. And that means if anyone without New Zealand residency, or Australian or Singaporean, may still be able to purchase, because it would consider as a commercial rated property.
Yep.
Okay, so price circa 1.5 million New Zealand, which is roughly
cheap.
29 million Taiwan dollars. Next, please.
Buy that myself.
Okay, so we want to finish off with a truly spectacular property in Lake Hayes. This is a substantial 700 square meters architecturally designed house sitting on over 3 hectares of land. As you can see, there's absolute attention to details. There's no expense shared on this property. There's only limited pictures where we can show you on the slide, but this property has a truly state-of-the-art media theatre room, outdoor fireplace where you can see on the top picture. There's a superb open-style kitchen with butler's pantry, so ideal for entertaining friends and families. If you take a short stroll to the outside the lawn, you will be able to see the pond and have a peaceful meditation and looking over to the waterfall. On the bottom right hand corner, you see an indoor swimming pool with a diving platform and a jet system in place. Okay, so this property is only, I think, 3 minutes away from the famous Amersfield Winery out in Arrowtown. And if you're a golfer, this property is only 5 minutes away from Millbrook Golf Resort. It's the price point is circa 12 to 13 million New Zealand dollars, which is only 230 million to 250 million Taiwan dollars. 2亿3千万到2亿5千万台币. I just need to show off my Mandarin.
Wow, very good.
Okay, back to you, Alex.
Thanks.
Hello? Can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Royal.
Okay, great. So my true name is Royal Reid. I noticed previously on the slide there was a different name. I haven't changed my
Sorry, Royal, that was my mistake.
That's okay. That's okay. So I guess I'll use the time just now to just share a little bit about how to go about buying the properties in New Zealand. Obviously, we're dealing with audience outside New Zealand tonight, and it is becoming a little bit more difficult in terms of travel internationally now for everyone, but it's not legally different in terms of how you go about buying a property in New Zealand. Alex, if you could help me put to my first slide and just a little bit of an introduction. And I'm obviously a lawyer from Auckland, and I'm speaking from Auckland in a dark winter evening to you at the moment. And I am going to talk to you about 3 main points. Alex, I think we can go to the next slide. This is just a little bit background about me. I came from Taiwan, and I have been working in the legal space, focusing on initially helping Taiwanese and then lots of other Asians from different countries in Asia to manage their entry into New Zealand, a lot of acquisitions, as well as a lot of legal compliance and problems that follow their acquisitions. And so I am here to tell you the current environment and the current way to manage this property purchase process in a slightly different legal environment that you may have become aware previously, when New Zealand was a lot more relaxed about overseas-based individuals and companies acquiring New Zealand properties. Could we go to the next slide? So I'm going to talk about these 3 topics today in the small time I have. And I hope it will be able to help you a little bit more clearly about exactly how you can go about it and what you might need to be aware of. So the first point that we have to be aware is currently, because of the 2018 law change, New Zealand government has made residential property in New Zealand a matter of sensitive land, which means no one coming from overseas can legally, without seeking any consent from the government, freely buy residential land, unless we have a special list of exemptions. So the first list of exemption, unless you are a New Zealand citizen, an Australian citizen or a Singapore citizen. So if you happen to be one of those, or you happen to be married to one of those, then you are not restricted. You can proceed and buy what you would like to buy for your residence or residential property investment in New Zealand freely. If you are not a citizen, for example, many of our friends in Taiwan are New Zealand residents, but you are not yet a citizen. But because of COVID or lifestyle change or any other reason like studying, members of the family, you want to come back to New Zealand to live. If you are a resident of New Zealand or a resident of Australia, and you want to come into New Zealand to live, then you could buy when you arrive by making a very simple application for an exemption that, hey, I'm here, I haven't stayed for 12 months, but I am here to buy a house to live. So that process is not difficult. So if you are a New Zealand or Australian resident, not on New Zealand Australian passport, but you are coming in because you feel New Zealand has done so well with COVID and you want to come in and get in there and live better, then you're welcome to come. And when you buy, you need to seek consent. And because you're a resident of New Zealand and Australia, we treat you differently. You can get a consent quite easily for your home. And if you are from other places, like if you are Americans, or if you're Koreans, or you might be Malaysian, Chinese, all these other non-exempt countries, and you want to come and buy a residential investment, then your best option would be to go to some of these properties that Sotheby just introduced, where they have some sort of exemption from the government to be able to still sell to overseas people. There are some established developers that have those options, so you should make sure you buy those. But if you are actually just looking for an investment that may not be residential for your own purpose, then you could still look at buying, say, commercial properties. Like sometimes the properties might be leased back to the hotel. So it's like a hotel managed property. Those are considered commercial properties. So you can buy those without consent. Equally, you can buy office building and whatnot. The only thing that has become sensitive and therefore require consent for overseas to buy are those that are residential or sensitive land, like seabed and foreshore, or these really large farms that are over the 5 hectare mark. And at the moment, it's been very interesting to notice that even though we are in a COVID environment or post-COVID environment, as we just got down to level 1 last night, there have been a lot more interest in the New Zealand market from people who either want to come back to New Zealand because they were previously overseas as an expat, or they are planning their return sooner or later. And many of the people are now making inquiries early to get in the market, while they believe there may be still a lot more room to negotiate, because some of the vendors are now feeling the stress from possibly change of employment or impact on their businesses, or simply worried about the global outlook and the economy. So many people are out there looking for deals. And in fact, we have seen a lot of people making offers and a lot of contract coming in for that sort of scenarios. So there have been also, if you look at in terms of the activities in the market, there's definitely a lot more distressed sales. A lot of people that are putting a property on the market because they simply can't afford to continue to service so many properties. And so there is actually quite a lot of activities, even though we are supposedly in a slightly more depressed market because of the COVID impact globally. And then the next question comes, if you are able to see all these houses on the internet and you're able to like them and decide or even negotiate a good price for them, what do you do when you can't actually physically fly in? If you are looking for something in the future to invest and you would be happy to rent it out, professionally managed, or keeping the existing tenants in place, you actually don't need to fly in these days. So in terms of buying properties in New Zealand, it is now very possible, and it has been the case for a long time, for you to complete the whole acquisition, from dealing with the agent through to doing your due diligence, as well as doing all the settlement documentation remotely, whether or not you are in a country where you could otherwise do that normally locally. In New Zealand, when you have to do the documentation, the New Zealand lawyers and the government organization that deal with these registration accept most of these purchase documents to be quite easily able to be signed. Instead of in front of a New Zealand lawyer, you could sign with a local notary, or if there is a New Zealand embassy near you, you can also quite easily sign with the New Zealand embassy. So once you have signed those documents and returned them to your lawyers, you usually don't have to come in, especially for a trip, just to sign some legal papers. All the legal papers can be done remotely. And in terms of verifying your IDs, there are lots of different ways that we can do that now for the purpose of compliance. So if you have seen something that you would like to make a move on, and you are not comfortable at the moment, or not even having the option to travel because of the global environment, it is still quite doable for you to complete everything remotely and legally and safely. And that is all I wanted to cover today, actually, Alex. Today I have another slide. Yeah. So even though I'm speaking today as a lawyer from Prestige Law, I just wanted to let you know that if you actually want to get hold of me and have any questions going into the future, our firm is actually merging with a local firm called Meredith Connell. And of course, we will continue to be an international team there. So we will be very happy to assist if you have any specific questions about your New Zealand legal needs. Thank you, Alex.
Sorry, thank you, Royal. I just realized I was on mute. So I had to stop sharing the screen just so I can see if we have any questions from the audience, because we've entered the Q&A period. So we have a couple of questions. We don't have much time, but we'll try and get through them as quickly as possible. So the first question is, which property types provide the best rental yields in New Zealand? So if you just jump right in and answer it.
Yeah, look, I'll cover that off. Look, at the moment for residential property, we would all suggest that apartments are going to offer the best yield return. The latest data we've been receiving out of CoreLogic is showing that apartment yields are running at 3.5% to 4%, which is quite good here in New Zealand for residential property, whereas traditional houses are sort of 2.5% to 3%. And I guess then, of course, when you add on the difference in capital outlay between the two, with apartments, generally speaking, across the marketplace, requiring a lot less investment from a capital outlay perspective, then we'd be recommending that apartments probably have the better yield. And there are some houses though that of course are offering good yields as well, but yeah, we'd be thinking apartments at this point in time for sure.
Especially with foreign investment, I think it's much easier with the maintenance, the ongoing taking care of the property. I think
for absentee owners, most definitely, not having to worry about ongoing maintenance, repairs and things like that, having that all taken care of in the monthly or annual outgoings, peace of mind for sure.
Thanks, Jason and Scarlett. And just before we get one more question, what's your recommendation to buyers when making offers post-COVID?
Okay. I think many purchasers during COVID or post-COVID would be wanting to coming in and make a sneaky offer and trying to get a bargain, but they often end up paying higher than what they would normally have to, because if you come in with a lower offer, lower than what the vendor's expectation. And very often you would end up in a multi-offer situation where there's multiple offers coming in, and that creates competition, and that ultimately drive the prices up. So our recommendation, I guess, would be to make a fair offer, not wanting to try to make a bargain. You probably won't make a huge bargain, but you would probably buy at a fair price. You definitely won't overpay, but a fair price is usually what we recommend.
Good advice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scarlett. Very disappointed. I wanted to hear about a bargain. That's what I want. So I think we're about out of time for today. Before we go, I'd like to thank again Nina Wu, Scarlett Wood, and Jason Gibbs from Sotheby's International Realty, and of course Royal Reed from Prestige Law. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. Of course, also congratulations on New Zealand for making it to level 1 and being COVID free. Very good. And congratulations again to Prestige Law for your merger. So I'd just like to remind everyone again that if you can access all the information you need about Sotheby's and Prestige Law and their services on their website. Alternatively, feel free to reach out to us at NCHEM Taipei, and we're more than happy to connect you. Thanks again. Till next time. See you.